The member from Ramsey, Representative Pinto.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I think it's really critical the public understand the context. We've said a lot of phrases, including the phrase constitutionally dedicated funds. So making sure just that the public understands that historically transportation does get these dedicated funds, gas tax, other things that come to transportation, rather than the general fund, money that goes to these other needs, schools, health, so much more. The advantage of that, members, over the years is that we're protecting transportation against the inevitable economic ups and downs. Otherwise, Representative Johnson pointed out earlier, in the next downturn, our transportation needs are going to be pitted against those other needs and very likely to be cut because, of course, transportation often in the short term can be pushed off in ways that our schools and health cannot be. The majority's transportation approach abandons this. It relies on those general fund dollars and on borrowing. What it does is it shifts those dollars from other sources so they can't be used for those other things. So we know, again, this is going to be a problem when the next downturn hits, and this is just the nature of economics, right? It will hit, and then at that point, there'll be this squeeze. But you know what, members? We don't have to wait for that downturn. We get to see the effects right now, actually just over these couple of days. Yesterday, we saw cuts in protections for our environment and natural resources, right? This afternoon, we will be seeing an education funding proposal that doesn't even keep up with inflation, doesn't even meet the needs of our students as inflation creeps in. Next week, we'll be seeing a $600 million cut in health and human services, protections for our most vulnerable Minnesotans. Members, this is at a time when we have a $1.6 billion surplus. What's going to happen when some deficit hits? You know, members, I was thinking actually about offering an amendment requiring MnDOT to study the prospects of filling potholes with textbooks and wheelchairs. Because essentially that's what's happening, right? We're diverting those funds for these purposes. The problem here is we've got a lack of a real plan for the long term. We need sustainable, dedicated, dependable funding, not competing with other uses, not kicking the can down the road, as Representative Considine said, not maxing out on the credit card, not borrowing and diverting these funds and the costs coming due. MnDOT itself, you'll note in a letter you have at your desks, talks about how this is going to force them to prioritize short-term fixes, focus on preserving the system in its current state rather than modernizing bridges and pavements for the long term. We need to modernize, members. And the one particular example that hits particularly close to home is the bill's approach to transit. 86 of 87 counties, members, have transit in their communities. But of course, transit is particularly at risk in this bill in the metro area. To have a vibrant, thriving Minnesota requires we have a vibrant, thriving greater Minnesota and a vibrant, thriving metro area. And every truly thriving, vibrant, great metro area in the country, in the world, has a vibrant, thriving public transit system. Well, this bill will result in massive cuts to that system, a system many, many people rely on. So this will be a massive blow to the metro, but again, that means it's a massive blow to Minnesota. Fundamentally, what's the Minnesota formula? What causes us to have a high quality of life, strong public services, and a strong economy? It's one Minnesota acting together for the long term. One Minnesota, greater Minnesota, and the metro. It's one Minnesota, roads, bridges, and transit. It's long-term thinking, dedicated funding that actually meets our needs, that protects our schools, our seniors, our most vulnerable. One Minnesota acting together for the long term. Members, this bill is not that. Vote no.